In relation to the budget as delivered by the Honorable Chief Secretary yesterday, the Tobago Business Chamber wishes to emphasize that Tobago's population represents about 5.07% of the national population. And if one goes back to Hansard, as way back as in the year 2000, and you look at the recommendations of the Dispute Resolution Committee, which were laid in Parliament, it is clear that they prescribed a range of about 4.03% to 6.9% as the acceptable ranges for Tobago's allocation from the national budget. So if one were to use this straight line demographic analysis and applying the Chief Secretary's guesstimated figure of 65 billion for the national budget, then your 5.07% share works out on a per capita basis to be about $3.3 billion of the national budget. So therefore, the 5.8% figure that was used by the Chief Secretary and the corresponding figure of 3.95 billion that he's asking for appear aspirational and ambitious at best, and fanciful and farcical at worst. It might be better to stick to the more arguable case of the straight line per capita request, which would bring it to the 3.3 billion instead of unrealistically shooting for the moon and landing face down in the sand. There are also two major areas to consider: the proportion of the proposed budget which is allocated to recurrent expenditure. Thankfully, we have seen a reduction in this figure, as in previous years it was as high as 88%. In other words, 88% of your budget was just being spent on goods and services and paying bills and paying salaries and paying rents and paying for vehicles and equipment that you were renting or using. So that figure is projected to come down to 71%, so that's a plus for this year's projected figures for the budget. There's also a greater proposed allocation for development projects and some infrastructural development. In fact, it's a total of in excess of $1 billion. And we are happy to see this as a chamber, because provided that these projects are managed and executed in an efficient and effective manner, and there's high quality of product delivery, then this augurs well for the future development of Tobago. We have long clamored for greater infrastructural investment. So if that's a trend we are going to start to see, we are happy for that. There's, however, the nagging issue of the low rate of earnings or income as compared to the expenditure when one looks at the Tobago budget overall. The projected income is about $216 million, which is about 5% of your expenditure. So you are basically spending about 20 times more than you are earning. I think any householder, anybody, running a little household budget or, managing your own finances will know that any such situation is unsustainable. And in an economic scenario and a macroeconomic scenario, it is wholly unsustainable for you to be spending about almost 20 times more than you are earning. That will plunge you into total chaos if you didn't have the facility of the yearly, handout or the yearly allocation from central government. So I think that this means that THA and Tobago need to both look into themselves to become more creative and innovative in terms of how they find increased earning capacity. That is something that we haven't seen enough emphasis on in this budget. We've seen the Chief Secretary lament that some of the taxes collected in Tobago are not paid in Tobago, are not used in Tobago, and we understand that. But there's a flip side to that, because, some of the services provided are not paid for by the THA. So we have to understand that, because under the 6th schedule, there are several areas such as national security, the judiciary, immigration, and many other areas and aspects, and many statutory bodies are funded out of Trinidad, like TNTEC, WASA, etc. So we have to be fair when we are balancing that equation. So what the THA needs to look at is finding its own ways of increasing its earning capacity, so that way it can now have a better chance and a better fight, in the national space to say, well, look, I am now requesting a bigger share of the pie. One of the ways we as a chamber have suggested is the immediate and unconditional repeal of the Foreign Investment Act, which will allow direct foreign investment to come straight into Tobago. And this is actually going to help Trinidad and Tobago, because we are in a forex crisis in TNT. We are struggling and scraping and scrunting for foreign exchange, but yet still we have this Foreign Investment Act which blocks all direct foreign investment into Tobago with a series of hurdles and hoops that you have to, jump over, dive through, and you never seem to be able to get to the finish line. So people just give up in frustration and they go up the islands to the other small islands which are rolling out the red carpet for foreign investors. So we need to get rid of this archaic and anachronistic legislation called the Foreign Investment Act and have a flood of direct foreign investment coming into Tobago, which is also going to spill over into Trinidad, because for any investment project, the majority of your goods and services will have to be sourced from or purchased or passed through Trinidad. So it's a win-win all round. So these are the thoughts of the Tobago Business Chamber in relation to the THA's budget presentation.